In a terrorism trial that's been more than a decade in the making, the Nigerian government was pushing for the absolute maximum sentence, the death penalty. But the court had something else in mind. Today, we're going to break down the really dramatic sentencing of Nnamdi Kanu and the unexpected twist that took it from a potential death sentence to life in prison.
So after Kanu was found guilty on all 7 terrorism charges, the stage was set for this massive sentencing decision. The prosecution was absolutely clear on what they believed justice looked like. The court, however, was about to carve its own path.
To really understand the final sentence, we have to start with the prosecution. Why was the Nigerian government arguing so forcefully for the death penalty? Well, their entire case was built on what they saw as the devastating, real-world fallout from the defendant's actions.
The government's lead lawyer, Adegboyega Awomolo, really did not hold back. He argued that Kanu's words weren't just words. They directly led to the deaths of security officers and the destruction of public property. The prosecution also tried to paint this picture of a defendant who had zero remorse, even describing his attitude in court as arrogant. For them, anything less than the death penalty was just not justice for the victims.
And the legal stakes here were just incredibly high. According to the prosecution, the law itself was black and white. For 5 of the 7 charges, the Terrorism Prevention Act of 2013 prescribed the death penalty. The government's lawyer flat out insisted that the court had, and I quote, no discretion in the matter. The law, as they saw it, demanded a death sentence.
So with the prosecution taking such a hard line, all eyes, of course, turned to the judge. How was he going to respond to all this? And how did he see the severity of these crimes?
Well, the court's language was incredibly strong. Justice James Omotosho left absolutely no doubt about how he viewed the defendant, calling him an international terrorist. That initial assessment seemed to completely back up the prosecution's entire case, painting a picture of a person who is a real danger to society.
The judge really doubled down on this point, saying that any claim of being a freedom fighter was just invalidated by the methods that were used. He concluded that Kanu went after his goals not through any kind of legitimate means, but through what he called brutal force and terrorism, which he said directly led to the bloodshed of innocent citizens.
And then the sentence came down. For counts 1, 4, 5, and 6, the very same counts the prosecution said required the death penalty, the judge imposed life imprisonment. He then added 20 years for count 3 and 5 years for count 7. But here's the crucial part. He ordered all sentences to run concurrently.
So what exactly does concurrently mean in this situation? It's kind of like having a bunch of different debts you have to pay, but you're allowed to pay them all off at the same time. The longest term, which in this case is life imprisonment, is what determines the actual time you serve. So the bottom line is, the effective sentence is life.
And this brings us to the real mystery at the heart of this case. The judge used some of the most powerful language you can imagine to condemn the defendant and his actions. He really sounded like he agreed with the prosecution's entire assessment. So why, then, did he stop short of imposing the death penalty?
This is the pivot point of the whole trial. Despite his very stern condemnation, Justice Omotosho made a conscious decision to temper justice with mercy, and he actually laid out his specific reasons for stepping back from that ultimate penalty.
Now, right before the sentencing, the court heard from a member of the House of Representatives from Kanu's home constituency, Honorable Obinna Agwocha, and he made a direct plea to the court to show mercy. And while the judge later said he wasn't fully persuaded by it, that plea definitely set the atmosphere for the decision that came next.
So what were the judge's reasons for mercy? He gave 2. First, he looked beyond Nigeria's borders and noted that the death penalty is facing more and more condemnation around the world. And second, he turned to religion, citing a specific passage from the Bible that calls for mercy. So you have these 2 factors, one global, one spiritual, that form the basis of his decision. It's this fascinating moment where you see international legal trends and personal faith intersecting in a Nigerian courtroom.
So the key takeaway here is that this mercy came with very strict conditions. The judge ordered that Kanu should not be held in Kuje Correctional Center, citing a tendency of violence, and instead be kept in protective custody. He also ordered a ban on any unsupervised access to phones or the internet and said all seized broadcast equipment would be forfeited to the government.
In the end, this case is just a fascinating look at how a judge has to weigh the letter of the law against these much broader principles. The court fully acknowledged how severe the crimes were, but ultimately chose a path of mercy, citing global trends and religious values.
It really leaves us with a big question. What's your honest take on the balance between justice and mercy in this ruling?